How's it going, everyone? Hope you're all keeping well, and welcome back to a new episode of Off the Grid. This is episode 20, and it is a very special one as we are back at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, this time on the iconic oval, home of the Indianapolis 500, which kicks off this week, qualifying this weekend coming up, and then the race next Sunday, the last Sunday of May, as it always is. Located in Speedway, Indiana, about 10 kilometers to the west of downtown Indianapolis, first opened in 1909 with this oval circuit. Just over 4 kilometers in length, 2.5 miles, which gives the 500-mile race its 200 lap distance. As for Formula 1 around here, it was actually part of the World Championship when the World Championship first started back in 1950 for 10 years until 1960. Some notable Formula 1 drivers that have won the Indianapolis 500 are, of course, Phil Hill, who won it in 1966 on his way to the Motorsport Triple Crown, winning the Indy 500, the Monaco Grand Prix and the Le Mans 24 Hours. The Indy 500 being won 4 times each by Al Olsner, AJ Foyt, Rick Mears and Julio Castroneves, most successful drivers around here. And then for the teams, it is Roger Penske's Team Penske winning the greatest spectacle in motor racing 20 times, most recently in 2024 with Joseph Newgarden, whose car we are driving now, starting off this one in the IndyCar, and then we're going to see how the Formula 1 cars compare to the IndyCar over a 4-lap qualifying run. Obviously just the 4 turns around here, the 4 left-hand 90-degree corners, which in qualifying spec are pretty easily flat if you get the line right, but come race day with heavy fuel, dirty air and some worn tyres, it can be very easy to push up into the outside wall and be in the pit lane earlier than you would have liked to be. And of course no DRS around here since you don't really brake for these corners. A few facts about Indy when it was first built back in 1909 by Carl G. Fisher after the opening of a few races. The American Automobile Association decided they were going to boycott any events around here due to it being deemed pretty unsafe, especially the road surface. So because of that, Fisher and his partners decided they were going to fully pave the 2.5 miles of track, which paved roads weren't very common back then. So a month after the original construction of the oval, 3.2 million blocks, literal just red brick blocks, were laid, giving the track its iconic name of the Brickyard. And to this day now, obviously fully tarmac except for a 3-foot strip 1 yard at the start finish line, which still contains the original bricks, the yard of bricks, which is traditionally kissed by the winners of the Indianapolis 500 after the race. And something which I didn't know until I was doing research for this video is that IMS is the largest capacity permanent sporting facility in the world, with just over 250,000 spectators being able to get crammed in here, and I'm sure every seat will be filled come race day in 2 weeks' time to witness what I believe is one of the greatest sporting events in the world, and hopefully one day I'll be able to get to Indianapolis and see it for myself in person. But for today, as I said, going to compare a Formula 1 car against an IndyCar over a 4-lap qualifying run to see how they compare and see who's best around this iconic circuit. So with that, let's get into the laps and see which series comes out on top. So as we get going here for these qualifying simulation laps, it's worth saying that I severely messed up the IndyCar setup and is much slower than what would really be expected, but it is what it is, and you can already see even with that, Joseph Newgarden Penske starting to pull a bit of a gap to head into turn 3, just under 350 kilometers an hour, as the Max Verstappen Red Bull was just under 320 kilometers an hour. So already a 30 kilometer an hour difference, and it should really be even more. but crossing the yard of bricks for the first of 4 laps, setting a 43.029 in the IndyCar, a 45.952 in the F1 car, so almost a 3-second difference. And really the IndyCar should be aiming for around a 42nd, a 41, maybe a 39 on a really good lap. So it just shows that there's a lot of difference, and it's all in the top speed. F1 cars make up a lot of their time and make them fast because of their downforce through tricky, technical, twisty parts of tracks. So when it's all straight and all flat out, that is what IndyCar is built for, especially in oval spec. Another thing with the F1 car is I was trying to manage the ERS deployment throughout the lap because there just wasn't enough electrical energy to keep it on fully for the 4 laps, so had to be turning it on and off a bit throughout the laps. And when you turn it off, you can really notice the difference, and you can drop down 20-30 kilometers an hour compared to when you turn it back on. Then you can see the speed shooting back up. See here now, I was over 340 kilometers an hour with ERS deployed, and then before we get into turn 3 dropped about 20 kilometers an hour when I turned it off to try and save it for the last lap. Overall, the F1 car was a lot easier to drive, probably because of the lower speed and the more downforce. It was just a lot easier to get better lines into the corners, as with the IndyCar, the higher speed, less downforce, the lines I was taking weren't the best on a lot of occasions, going very wide through a lot of the corners, but getting them right on some occasions, and then you just see that you don't scrub off as much speed when you get the line right. But coming through the final 2 corners now for the IndyCar, as the F1 car enters turn 3 now, and now through turn 4 onto the pit straight for the IndyCar, going to come across the line and set an average speed of 209.231 miles an hour, 336.7 kilometers, with the F1 car setting at 201.2 miles per hour and a 323.848 kilometer an hour average lap speed over the 4 laps. So I think it goes without saying that we're never going to see Formula 1 race on the Indianapolis Oval again. It's just never going to happen. Formula 1 doesn't race on ovals, and I think that's a good thing. Just leave the Indy 500 as its own special event for IndyCar. It is one of the greatest spectacles in motor racing, if not the greatest spectacle in just sports in general, really. But yeah, it's cool to be able to do these things on the sim, compare the 2 series around this great track and see the differences between the 2. Obviously, people would generally think that Formula 1 is faster, but when it comes to straight line speed and being flat out, IndyCar takes the crown there. We'll put a few more turns in and Formula 1 will show what it was made for. But that is it for this episode of Off the Grid, very special one here at Indy. I hope you did enjoy. If you did, make sure to leave a like and subscribe before you go. But until the next one, thanks for watching. See you then.